Good day and welcome to Conversations with AARP in the Virgin Islands. I'm Troy Deshabir-Schuster, State Director of AARP in this territory, and as always, it's a pleasure coming to you today to bring you important information. We want to welcome you to today's conversation with Michael Rosario and Dr. Aletha Baumann of the Virgin Islands Neuroscience Research Project. Today we'll be talking a little bit about their research on brain health and cognitive health. Very important information, very interesting information, especially as our population continues to age, continues to get older, and we're seeing more and more cases of Alzheimer's and various types of dementia. AARP, a nonprofit, nonpartisan member organization, has been working to promote the health and well-being of Americans 50 years of age and older for more than 60 years. Through its policies and mission, AARP remains committed to supporting healthy longevity by reducing the risk of cognitive decline. Today's guests will walk us through the content of their work on brain health and the correlation between stress and cognitive behaviors. So again, welcome Dr. Baumann and Michael Rosario.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. And I know that you and we've talked a little bit about the research, but now we want to involve the broader public here in the Virgin Islands and let them see how they can get involved. But first of all, Dr. Baumann, tell us about yourself, what you do professionally here in the Virgin Islands.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I was going to talk more about Michael than I was talking about me. I've been a professor of psychology at the University of the Virgin Islands on the St. Croix campus for many, many years. And we have a program that is funded by the National Institutes of Health to help people who want to become experimental psychologists. These are people who don't want to practice, they're not going to be clinical psychologists, but they want to do research to find out really what's going on. And then that will help the practice, obviously. So Michael was a sophomore, was it, Michael? I think that we identified him as having potential, not just potential to do research, but to go on to graduate school and get a PhD and then get big grants. And he's done that. So this is part of what we call the Emerging Caribbean Scientist Program. And I, for many years, was the coordinator for St. Croix, which is where Michael is. So Michael goes off in between his junior and senior year to Boston University School of Medicine to do some research in the School of Anatomy and Neurology, in Neurobi. And then he was accepted to graduate school. So his mentor, Dr. Karen Schoen, wrote a grant to the Alzheimer's Association for us to compare people on St. Croix to people in Boston. And what we're comparing is how does stress relate to your cognition? That's a fancy word for, how you input information, how you process it, how you make your memories, how you retrieve your memories, how you figure out problem solving. And we hypothesized that people with higher stress levels would have lower cognition. We're not looking at people with Alzheimer's already. We're looking at people before that, because then we know what it's going to do after if they get dementia. So we're looking at a bunch of stressors. Discrimination. Have I been discriminated against because of my age, my race, my sex, my sexual orientation? Have I been discriminated against, and what has that done to me? We're also looking at just other, like physical stress. We're going to be checking people's blood pressure and seeing how their physical life is affecting them. Now, when we started it, we didn't know about COVID. Mm-hmm. Talk about a stressor.
Yes.
Either for ourselves or for families and friends. So we're looking at stress, anxiety, all of these things together and how it relates to, as you said, how they think, how they remember, how they process information. And the comparison between Boston and St. Croix, I know you're going to ask me. So St. Croix, because I'm on St. Croix and Michael's on St. Croix, and the NIH grant is paying for 3 undergraduate students to be research assistants. So they're all on St. Croix. So that's the reason we're focusing on St. Croix. So we're looking for people between 50 and 80 who are willing to spend some time with us, filling out surveys, doing it online or on paper. And then we're going to be doing an analysis and a comparison of people. So that's basically what we're doing. We're excited about being on the show and talking to AARP because that's our population. That's my population too. that we can see if people would be interested in joining the research. I mean, people have told me it's kind of fun. They learn a lot about themselves when they fill out the surveys. And a lot about themselves. We don't give them the results, and we don't share the results with anybody. Nobody will ever know, oh my God, Aletha Baumann, failed the blankety blank test or whatever. No one will ever know. They'll know person number 2506 didn't do so well on that test. They won't know it's me. So it's confidential. So,
Right.
So this is part of Michael's research that he's going to be doing to get his PhD. Mm-hmm. And we have lots of ideas for where it goes after that.
Great. So before we go deeper into the research, so Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. We know you're born in St. Croix. You studied at UVI. Tell us your journey and what made you become interested in clinical psychology.
For sure. It's a tough act to follow Dr. Baumann after all of that. With all of that information, it was really great to hear that summary. But to give a bit more detail, I came back to UVI in 2015, and that's where I met Dr. Baumann for the second time. I had taken a break from school and decided to come back to finish my degree in psychology. And she got a hold of me, and she was like, you would be really great at research. You'd be really good at asking these big questions and trying to figure out how to solve them. And so I started working with her on an intimate partner violence study that had been done between St. Croix and St. Thomas and I think the University of Baltimore and Maryland, or Maryland and Baltimore.
Right. Well, it was in Baltimore.
In Baltimore. It was in Baltimore. So a bunch of different schools that had like this project. And because of that, she introduced me to the Emerging Caribbean Scientists program, which I applied to and I got into. And I was funded by the National Institutes of Health through that. And after that, I was able to apply for the summer research program at Boston University in the Department of Anatomy and Neurobiology with Dr. Karin Schoen. And a lot of the reasons for why we're doing this project now kind of was built out of that experience, because originally the lab there, they'd been looking at how exercise, aerobic fitness would really help with brain health in young and older adults. And I started really asking questions about, okay, no, we know that there's this positive experience that's really good for the brain. What about these negative experiences just based on our everyday interactions with other people? How can that then affect how our brains react to these external factors? So I worked with Dr. Schoen over the last, we've been working together over the last 5-6 years now, trying to get this research up and running and getting done. But it's been a fantastic experience. So currently I'm about to enter my 6th year. I'm like the final run. I'm working on my dissertation right now. So hopefully I'll be able to, use the data that we collect for this and data that we've been collecting in Boston. We're also including MRI data, so actual brain images, and being able to study how these different brain regions are affected or related to things like these different stressors that we're really interested in.
So is your PhD in neurobiology or clinical psychology?
So it's in cognitive neuroscience. Like neuroscience, I'm in the graduate program for neuroscience at Boston University. But I'm really studying cognitive neuroscience. So what I'm doing is I'm doing this research with humans rather than, in animals or with cells or these other things that aren't as interesting or fun to me. I really enjoy being able to ask these questions that I really want to know about. How do we translate this research more directly into like positively influencing brain health in older adults?
So now you just mentioned studying a population in St. Croix and a population in Boston. So those are the two populations. And are you doing a comparison between the two, or is it just that one complete pool?
For sure. So we are doing, originally before COVID hit and just, messed up everything with the research that we were doing, we were planning on doing a comparison between Boston and St. Croix. And the reason that we were doing that is that we were looking at racial majority and racial minority differences in both areas. So there was a pretty comparable split. So 75% of the population on St. Croix was Black, while 25% of the population in Boston was Black. So we were able to look at this kind of flip and say, okay, if you're part of the racial majority, you might experience less discrimination due to racism, but you might experience other forms of discrimination, while the opposite might be true in Boston. And we wanted to see if whether if you're part of the racial majority or minority, whether that would have a appreciable influence on your brain health. Because what we were really looking at is a specific brain region called the hippocampus. And this region is important for the way that we think and we feel and we remember. And it's also something that's also very plastic. So it's very sensitive to experiences. And it's also one of the first regions to be negatively impacted by Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And so we were looking at hippocampal function. We were going to have people play this game on the computer and use that game to really look at how folks, how they react to certain things, and use that to as a proxy for hippocampal function, for brain function. And then we could look at how that was related then to these different stressors, discrimination, everyday life stress. And now with COVID, we were looking at this impact of events. So we're looking at this major event that had a negative impact on everybody's lives, and whether or not that had some kind of influence on brain health. So what we're really trying to do is, as we're moving forward, we're still trying to compare, but we had to, change it into this remote research study. So what we're doing right now is calling participants over the phone and going over this cognitive assessment over the phone, and doing the same thing in Boston.
Great. And this is something that's very near and dear to the heart of AARP. Just recently, AARP gave a grant of approximately $65 million for research in Alzheimer's, which is, of course, connected with the kind of studies that you're doing.
Definitely.
So, we put a lot of resources into that and see that it's something very important. We need a lot of advances in that. And there's a wonderful book I've told everybody who would listen to me, written by Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who's a neurosurgeon. The title of the book is Keep Sharp. And in there, he mentions AARP's research in practically every chapter, because AARP has done a great body of research in cognitive health. But he talks a lot about stress, various types of stress, and how that leads to cognitive decline. So it'll be interesting to read the results of your research and compare that to what Dr. Sanjay Gupta has found in his research and put in his book. His book is not nearly as scientific as your research results would be presented. His book is written for the lay person to read and understand. Yeah. But a very interesting book. If you haven't read it yet, it might be some good free time reading for you. Not that your free time isn't already taken up and consumed with a lot of other reading and research.
Yeah, no, thank you for that suggestion. I would look forward to being able to come back next year once we've collected all the data to talk more about what we found and make sure that it's accessible to as many people as possible, because I think that's one of the things that I've always critiqued about research, is that so many researchers will come into communities in the Virgin Islands and do the research, but then disappear afterwards without ever, giving anything back about what they found or anything that we could be doing to really positively influence health in folks on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Now, getting deeper into the research, and either of you can answer this, what kind of data are you still collecting, and what kind of participation do you need from the community? So if you will tell us more about that.
We're hoping to have 60 people from St. Croix between the ages of 50 and 80. Right now, we only have about 12. And that's partly because when we first started this, we were going to go face to face. We were going to talk to people and say, this is the research. Would you be interested? And people would say, sure, I'd be happy to. Now we have to put flyers up and put an ad in the newspaper and other things. And so we don't have as many as we need. So we're really interested in finding more participants. Michael, you want to explain then what they have to do after that? After they say, yeah, I'll do it.
For sure, yeah. It's so there's two ways of going about it. So what we're really asking, the first thing that we do is we do a pre-screening over the phone to get folks to just see if they're eligible to be a part of the study. And the main things are, being between 50 and 80 years of age, and we're looking at just community dwelling older adults within that age range. So we're not looking at any restrictions when it comes to race or ethnicity. Whether or not you have access to a phone or or the internet, because we can also send the surveys that we're going to be asking these questions for via email. And so what we're really asking folks are questions about their everyday stress, experiences of discrimination, depression, anxiety, just to get an idea of these different factors that we can control for and think about when we're asking this general question about how does stress impact the brain.
Mm-hmm. So that the telephone screening and cognitive test doesn't take very long, but filling out all of those questionnaires takes between an hour and a half and 2 hours. You don't have to do it all at once, but over a period of time, you can do it. Either we will mail you or mail whoever's interested the packet and with a addressed stamped envelope to send it back to us, or you can use a secure web page like a lot of us use for all sorts of things, and you could start, stop, go back and do it. And then we forgot to mention this. The grant includes $60 per person who finishes the survey. So after everything is in, either the paper copy or the web-based survey, then Boston University will send you a check for $60.
Great.
Thanks.
Great. That's a nice little incentive for sure. Definitely. So how would somebody contact you then? Again, if you can be specific about that, if they're interested in participating in the research.
For sure. So there's two ways that you can go about contacting us. The first, if you're interested right now and you just want to send a quick email, our email is cogmood, so COGMOOD @bu.edu. The other way that you can contact us is you can either text or call us, and the phone number is 340-474-1914. And we have research assistants from UVI who will be helping us with answering those phone calls. And you can also talk to Dr. Baumann or myself if you want to get some more information. So reaching out through that email is probably the fastest way to reach out to both me and Dr. Baumann. And if you have like some other questions, you can reach out to the research assistants from UVI using that phone number.
Okay, great.
So the phone number, Michael, say it again because I always forget it.
It's 340-474-1914.
Great, and we will put that in the chat on Facebook also.
Fantastic.
People can have that and the web address, the email address. Sorry, the email address you just mentioned.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and then once we get that, then we'll contact you back within a couple of days and start the process.
And what about anonymity? I know people are always concerned about privacy. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, one of the things that we stress the most is confidentiality, because we want to make sure that we're protecting people so that they feel comfortable with the information that they're volunteering. And also so that we kind of build a relationship of trust so that when we're doing research in the future, we make sure that people know that when they give us information about their experiences, that they feel comfortable knowing that we're not taking it and sharing it with anyone. What we do is we gather the information, we make sure we create a code so that, we have like a number associated with a person. And then you never see, like no one besides the researchers who do the research will ever see like that master sheet, because we want to make sure that we keep those things separate so folks can be well assured that their information won't go anywhere but between the folks doing the research.
Yeah.
Great. So can you give us an example?
Sorry. All of the answers will either be directly into this secure website or we will input it there. And once that's done, everything will be destroyed. Nobody will know who is responded to what. So confidentiality for sure.
Yeah, so no names will be captured and saved anywhere. It'll just be identifier numbers, like a serial number kind of thing.
Right, exactly. That we will have the name and the address to send them the check. But after that's done, there will be no more information about their personal contact information.
Great. And can you give us an example of some of the questions without tainting the results? Maybe a
Yeah, that
couple of
is.
examples.
For sure. So, like Dr. Baumann was mentioning earlier, one of the main questions that we're asking is about discrimination. So we ask folks to tell us about their experiences with just everyday things like going shopping, being around folks, being like, being stopped by the police, because we're also doing this both in St. Croix and in Boston. And we ask the participants to say, what do you attribute this to? If you felt like you were discriminated against, was it because of your race, because of your sexuality, because of your gender identity, because of your age? Because we want to know, is there something different about how these different identities might influence the way that the way that this influences the brain? Or is it like, these are all just really stressful experiences that might result in some kind of prolonged, exposure to stress? But like, those are the major questions that we're asking. We're also asking about like things like anxiety and about depression, because those things are already highly related to things like discrimination. Because we really want to make sure that we're getting a fuller picture and a full idea when we're asking these questions.
I can't obviously tell you what the questions are on the cognition test, but I could make one up. So listen very carefully, please. I'm going to recite some numbers, and then I'm going to ask you to tell me what they were. Are you ready?
Yep.
5, 1, 8, 4, 8, 0, 9, 4, 9, 1. That's not on the test. That's not on the test.
I already failed that. That's like the 5th digit, and that was it.
But it's like memory. So I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't have given all those. Most people can only remember 7 numbers at best. But I love doing that, because you're focusing and then trying to figure out how people remember those things. Do they, what I just gave you was my cell number. And so if I had said 34064329114, you would have said, I know that. 340, forget that. Then, oh yeah, I know that one. So you can chunk it. So how people practice, how they form memories, that's what we're kind of getting at. So it's like asking you a long-term memory, short-term memory kind of things. But the number one is not on the test. So
right. And I'm sure that nobody remembers your phone number now.
I I better turn the phone off. No.
Right.
Yeah. So we're looking at all of these different anxiety, depression, COVID experiences, feelings of discrimination, and we're seeing then how it relates to cognition. So we might, for instance, find that make up something else, that people who've had family members with COVID are having trouble with short-term memory, but not long-term memory. Or people, as they get older, start saying to themselves, one of the tests is what we call subjective memory. So I can't remember people's names. So I say to people, I've never been able to remember anybody's name, but it's sort of like more now than it was before. Mm-hmm. So what you think about your memory, what you think about what it's changed over the years is going to be very interesting to see. You may have perfect cognition, but you think you're losing it. And what does that then do to you? So a lot of different tests, a lot of different studies. I think it's an amazing amount of data that we'll have. And then, so Michael promised we'd come back and we'll tell you some of the results. And there will be more. And I think we should talk to Dr. Gupta about going on TV, Michael.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. That would be a fascinating interview on CNN with Dr. Gupta. Huh? But, it's interesting just now, Dr. Baumann, you said something about if people think that they're in cognitive decline, then what does that actually do? And, I must admit that now I'm in my 50s, and sometimes I start second guessing myself, like, am I as sharp as I was?
Yeah.
Am I forgetting things too easily? And I don't want to get paranoid about that, because sometimes the thing that you fear the most is the thing that you accomplish or achieve, or,
Very good point.
Yeah.
We have sadly opinions about what happens when you age. And as you were saying, Dr. Gupta pointed out, keep your mind active, be active physically. We know that that's going to help you. But if you start thinking you're on a decline, it might precipitate that. So we're looking at both your actual cognition and how you think about how you think. And that is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, we don't have much time left, but could you mention some of the future research where you in particular are planning?
For sure. So what we're doing in Boston right now is we're trying to also expand this research to young adults, because we want to know how early does this start. I'm thinking it starts as early as childhood, but we're trying to recruit from Boston University students to ask them a lot of the same questions, and also have them play that video game I mentioned at the beginning, where they're able to tap into this brain function that we're really interested in looking at. Additionally, we're planning on doing brain imaging, so looking at what people, what like brain activity while they're in the scanner playing that same game. Also looking at brain structure. So are these brain regions, like how are they related? Like, do we see more volume, less volume, more thickness, less thickness? Because those things are indicative of brain health also.
And do you get to do interesting work with the brains of cadavers, of people who have died, and those kinds of studies of the brain?
I haven't been able to. I will say, being in the anatomy department at Boston University, I've been able to hold a human brain in my hands and just been really freaked out and shocked. And this was a person, this was so having a lot of respect for people who donate their bodies to medicine is just really something that's ingrained in me now. But I haven't been able to myself go in and do any kind of anatomy work. That I don't think it's necessarily for me.
Yeah, it's certainly not for everybody. That's for sure. For sure, I can appreciate that. So, and any final thoughts? We have just about 1 minute left.
Well, I'd just like to thank you and AARP for supporting research and helping us figure out what's going on in our minds. And so if people are interested in doing the research, we'd love to have you contact us. We're kind of excited about having St. Croix represented, in the research.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show today. And Michael, all the very best with your research. And we look forward to calling you doctor in the very near future.
Thank you so much.
Come back and support our cognitive and emotional health here in the Virgin Islands, especially in the island of St. Croix, your home island. And Dr. Baumann, thanks for your many, many years of service here at the University of the Virgin Islands and all that you've done to foster the study of psychology here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Have a great day, both of you.
Yep.
You too.
We'll see you soon.
Yes, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.